The Five Nights at Freddy's movie's development has gone through multiple different iterations through its entire life cycle, beginning with Warner Brothers' canceled adaptation and finishing off with Blumhouse's eventual release of the film. But what I'm most curious about in regards to the movie's production is how the movie went from its original rating of an R-level film all the way to what we had released just last year in October for the film's premiere. Well, in this video, I'll be going over the FNAF movie's sudden change in direction with the film's horror, and all of the visual changes that we have recorded from actual sources from the movie's production team. So amidst the hype surrounding the FNAF movie just last year, a lot of new images were surfacing from across the filming sets of the movie. Beginning with one of my personal favorites is a shot of the yellow rabbit's face mask. Now, from my understanding, this image was taken from somebody who was given a tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop. For those who don't know, they worked on the animatronics and costumes for the movie, and during their tour of the facility, they ended up snapping a few pictures of some props they found interesting that were on display, thus giving us this amazing first reveal of Spring Bonnie's costume. However, I may be off a little bit from the actual story, as this story happened many months ago, so please excuse any mistakes I may make covering any information throughout the video. Anyways, following the release of this iconic photo, we had many different videos and photos released featuring the Spring Bonnie costume, but I'll come back to these in just a minute, because first, we need to skip ahead a few months, because as of recording this video, a few weeks ago, we had an image of Matthew Lillard posted onto his Instagram page, and shown in the photo is an early version of the suit with lots of interesting burn marks and exposed flesh. But if we go back to the original image of the mask, it is clear that both suits look very similar in design. We found out later that this is because an R-rated cut of the film was originally planned as the movie's theatrical release, but with the changes being made during pre-production of the film, Blumhouse ended up scrapping the R cut of the movie, and thus left behind a scrapped script which was obtained by someone who was in contact with one of the workers on the film, which we will be going over in depth to get an understanding of some of the changes to the movie's official release. But first, I'd like for us to cover some of the changes to the Yellow Rabbit suit, because back in December of 2023, the FNAF movie was released onto DVD, and included in this was a bundle of new, never-before-seen behind-the-scenes videos, and in one of the shots, we can see the Yellow Rabbit suit with beaming red lights emitting from the eyes. I've also spoken with many people who have connections with some of the people who worked on the scene, and they claim the original suit had lights that could emit from the inside of the suit. I'm kind of upset that this version of the suit wasn't featured in the final form of the movie, and I have similar feelings towards this next topic, which is going over the pizzeria's exterior design, because as many of you may know, during the early parts of 2023, we had photos from the exterior of the pizzeria that was being built in Chalmette, Louisiana, where filming of the movie would be taking place that year. The photo depicts a similar design to what we got in the movie, but with some minor changes, such as these spikes on the top of the pillars, which aren't included in the finished model of the building, and some small mentions like different colored arches and separate wall patterns. I'm sure if you kept looking over these photos side by side, you notice a lot of small distinctions between the images. But for something I'm certain you wouldn't have noticed the difference on, even if it were featured in the final film, is something quite small of a change, which has to do with Max in the movie. For those who don't remember, Max was part of the group of thugs who broke into the pizzeria to get Mike fired from his position of security guard. She also helped babysit Abby during the early part of the movie. Well, in one of the shots during the breaking in sequence, you can spot a dog for just a few frames, hidden in the back of the truck. Now, this dog played a very small role in the R-rated cut of the movie, as it was ever really mentioned and brought up in a conversation between Mike and Max, as Max mentions how Mike should get a guard dog like her dog Bonesy to scare people away who keep putting delinquency notices on his door. Now, this next information I'm about to bring up doesn't really have a source to back it up, at least not one that I can really recall, but I vaguely remember hearing about some scene with Max taking Bonesy, her dog, out to walk around outside the pizzeria while she sits around waiting for the thugs to mess up the pizzeria's interior. But again, I can't recall where I heard this from, so just take it with a grain of salt. Well, for something that shouldn't be taken as lightly is this next scene, which is truly horrifying, because during the intro sequence of the movie, we get to see the previous night guard before Mike during his night shift. Well, what plays out in the film is quite different to the cut version, because in the official release, the guard gets attacked by Foxy and put into the Shreddy fast chair. Yeah, that's what I'm calling it. Anyways, the scene would have been quite different in the cut version, where the guard, instead of being attacked by Foxy, would have been hit on the top of the head by a mysterious character in a mask and a hood, using a chair. This character then would have dragged the guard across the floor, leaving a trail of blood behind him. We actually do get to see the scene, but just not in the movie, because a small portion of it was shown in one of the trailers for the movie, specifically the first trailer at 1 minute and 27 seconds, where you can see the guard being dragged across the ground. If they would have kept this in the movie, I'm sure it would have been pretty terrifying. Maybe even as terrifying as this next subject we're about to discuss, because these scenes just keep getting darker as we go deeper down the rabbit hole of this movie's cut content. And for that reason, I'd like to go over a scene involving Mike's younger brother Garrett, because in a scene from the final movie, during the end sequence with Spring Bonnie's first appearance, there was supposed to be a shot of Garrett coming into view from the shadowy corridor. Mike then would have been led by the side of his brother, where Garrett then would have backed up into the darkness, where the yellow rabbit then would have emerged, just like we got in the film's final cut. This shot would have been pretty similar to the one of Foxy and Fritz, just with more of an emphasis on the darker tone of the scene, so that may be why it was cut from from the film, but in all honesty, I'm unsure. But I'm certain that this scene may pique your interest, for the reason that it may have some heavy impacts on the lore of the FNAF cinematic universe. And that's because during the scene with Vanessa's monologuing towards Mike about her past, she reveals to Mike that William Afton is her father. Well, in this cut of the film, his name would have actually never been mentioned in any sense or form. She only mentions how he is her father. This could have had many implications on the overall story, but truly we'll just never fully know. Well, after this, she would have handed Mike the photo of her as a kid, same as in the movie, but this time the photo is instead of her standing with all main 4-stage animatronics. I'm not sure if this would have had any real big impacts on the main storyline, but I'm glad with what they ended up picking for the final cut of the movie. And if you're looking for something a little bit more lighthearted, then I think this next one is just for you. As most of you probably know, there was a lot of backlash for a specific scene in the movie. For most of you, you probably know which scene I'm referring to, but for the small majority of you who don't, let me just show you. That's right, we're covering the difference between the fort scene, which isn't a lot, because unexpectedly, the fort scene would have still been in the R cut of the movie, according to the leaked script. But not even that, it actually would have been longer than the version we got in the final cut, giving us an extra scene that featured Bonnie, with Abby sitting on his shoulders giving her a piggyback ride. And lucky for us, we actually have a visual for what the scene would have been, thanks to a video posted by one of the crew members on set of the filming. Now, we're unsure if this was just a practice run or for the main scene. Either way, I don't think it really matters. Well, after going over these interesting changes throughout the production of the movie, there's one scene I've been neglecting across this entire video so far, and I think now's the time to go over what I think is probably the single most gut-wrenching scene in the whole mass of scrapped content. Because during the break-in scene, where Carl gets his face bitten off by the cupcake, Hank, who would have been established as Carl's son in this cut of the film, would have stumbled upon his face being ripped to shreds by the cupcake. Due to witnessing this, Hank ends up charging after Chica with his axe, swinging it upward before being stopped by Chica, who grips it before it can reach her. Now, whilst this is happening, it's stated that Bonnie ends up behind Hank, and unbeknownst to him, Bonnie swings his electric guitar and smashes it straight through the top of Hank's skull. Pretty gory, I know. But the thing is, we actually do get to see the scene play out, because the actor for Hank, Christian Stokes, posted onto his TikTok page a collection of different takes for his part in the movie. And within this group of videos was a take showing this exact scene as described, where Hank swings the axe before being stopped by Chica, but the clip cuts off before the messy parts could take place. Personally, I think all of these scenes could have added a nice touch to the movie that fans were hoping for in terms of a darker tone of a FNAF film. But honestly, I'm grateful for what we received, and I believe that the wait was well worth it.